Your training days are over, Rowan. Director Phelps stood in the conference room doorway, arms crossed, his expression cold. The 6 new hires seated around the table exchanged uncomfortable glances as I froze mid-sentence, marker still pressed against the whiteboard. Excuse me? I managed, my voice steady despite the sudden hollowness in my chest. You're being removed from the onboarding rotation, effective immediately. His eyes flicked to the new employees who'd been hanging on my every word just moments before. Maeve will take over from here. Maeve appeared behind him, smiling tightly, clutching a tablet to her chest. She wouldn't meet my eyes. But we're in the middle of… I gestured to my detailed workflow diagram. Pack up your materials, Phelps cut me off. Management has concerns about your approach. One of the new hires, Toby, I think, raised his hand tentatively. Sir, Rowan was just showing us how to navigate the ticketing system more efficiently. It's actually really helpful. Phelps' jaw tightened. Thank you for your input, but this isn't up for discussion. He turned to me, voice dropping. You're making management look bad with your little shortcuts and workarounds. We have established protocols for a reason. I felt 20 pairs of eyes on me as I silently gathered my notes, marker still uncapped in my trembling hand. I'd spent weeks preparing these training modules, refining them based on previous new hire feedback. Now, in one humiliating moment, it was all being stripped away. Conference room in 10 minutes, Rowan, Phelps added as I walked past him. We need to discuss your role going forward. The hallway felt a mile long as I walked back to my desk, neck burning with embarrassment, mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. Before I continue with what happened in that conference room, a conversation that would change everything, I want to say something. If you've ever been publicly humiliated at work, if you've ever had your passion project ripped away because you made someone insecure, you know exactly how I felt in that moment, like the carpet had been yanked from beneath my feet. If this story resonates with you, please hit like and subscribe. Your comments mean everything. They remind me I'm not alone in this experience. Now, let me tell you who I am and how I ended up in this mess. My name is Rowan. I'd been at Greenfield Technical Solutions for 3 years as a customer support specialist. Not the most glamorous job, troubleshooting software issues, walking clients through installations, but I was good at it, really good. I had systems for everything. Keyboard shortcuts that saved minutes on each call, documentation templates that cut report writing time in half, troubleshooting decision trees that solved problems in record time. I wasn't always this organized. Growing up with undiagnosed ADHD meant school was a nightmare of forgotten assignments and missed instructions. After my diagnosis at 22, I became obsessed with creating systems that worked with my brain, not against it. Visual guides, checklists, memory tricks. These weren't just helpful for me. They made information accessible to everyone. 6 months ago, I volunteered to help train new hires. Our department had grown rapidly, and the standard onboarding process was lacking. New employees spent weeks floundering, bombarding senior staff with questions, their productivity dismally low. Just walk them through the basics, my supervisor Zora had said. Login procedures, ticketing system, escalation protocols, nothing fancy. But I couldn't help myself. I redesigned the training materials, color-coded workflow charts, created interactive exercises that simulated common scenarios. I stayed late designing quick reference guides, simple enough that anyone could understand them at a glance. The results were immediate. My first training group was processing tickets independently within days, not weeks. Their error rates dropped by 63%. Customer satisfaction scores climbed. When the next round of hiring came, Zora didn't even ask. She just put me on the schedule. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, she said, reviewing the performance metrics. I've never seen new people get up to speed this fast. That's when the whispers started. Rowan's creating her own system. She's not following the corporate training manual. New hires are asking why the rest of the department doesn't use her methods. I didn't pay attention at first. I was too busy refining my approach, collecting feedback, tweaking exercises to address common sticking points. The new hires started coming to me instead of their assigned mentors. They'd send me grateful messages about how my guides had saved them from embarrassing mistakes. Some even stayed after hours to learn additional tricks. When my 4th training group's 30-day metrics came in, showing productivity 40% higher than any previous cohort, I thought management would be thrilled. Instead, I was summoned to Director Phelps's office. Your training sessions need to stick to approved materials, he informed me, sliding a dusty binder across his desk. This is the official onboarding guide. I I flipped through pages of outdated screenshots and vague instructions. But this doesn't even cover the new ticketing system we implemented last year, I pointed out. Then submit your additions through proper channels for approval. The training committee meets quarterly. That's in 3 months, I protested. We have new people starting next week. His expression hardened. This isn't a suggestion, Rowan. It's a directive. I tried compromising. I used the official materials but supplemented them with optional resources. The new hires still flourished, and word spread to other departments. People I'd never met would stop me in the break room. You're the training wizard, right? Any chance you could help our team? That's when Zora called me into her office, looking uncomfortable. Upper management feels your training innovations are disrupting the established hierarchy, she explained carefully. The training committee members are concerned you're making them look obsolete. But the results are impressive, she finished. But this isn't just about results. It's about process, about respecting the chain of command. I thought that was the end of it, a warning to tone things down. I didn't realize it was the beginning of the end, which brings me back to that humiliating moment in the conference room and the meeting that followed. Phelps was waiting when I arrived, along with Maeve and Lionel from HR. The conference room felt suddenly small, airless. Sit. Phelps gestured to the chair facing them. 3 against 1. Am I in trouble? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. This isn't disciplinary, Lionel clarified, though his expression suggested otherwise. We're realigning your responsibilities to better serve departmental needs. Meaning? You're banned from all training sessions, Phelps stated bluntly. Effective immediately. The words hit like a physical blow. Why? The feedback scores. This isn't about feedback, Maeve interjected. It's about consistency across departments. We appreciate your enthusiasm, Lionel added, not sounding appreciative at all. But training requires adherence to established methodologies. Your improvised approach undermines the authority of the training committee. I took a deep breath. The committee's materials are outdated. New hires struggle for weeks using those guides. My approach gets them productive in days. That's not your decision to make, Phelps snapped. You were asked to follow protocol. You chose not to. Furthermore, Maeve added, some of your efficient shortcuts bypass security measures put in place for a reason. This was news to me. What security measures? She exchanged glances with Phelps. That's not important. What matters is you'll no longer conduct or participate in any training activities. You'll return to your regular duties and submit all training materials you've created to the committee for review. But I created those on my own time, using company knowledge, Phelps cut in. That makes them company property. I felt sick. Hours of work, careful design, thoughtful exercises, all to be buried in committee limbo or, more likely, stripped for parts without credit. Is that all? I asked, standing before they dismissed me. One more thing, Phelps added. We'd appreciate your discretion on this matter. No need to discuss these changes with colleagues or new hires. Translation: don't tell anyone we're stealing your work and sabotaging their training. I nodded stiffly and walked out, mind racing. As I returned to my desk, I noticed Toby and another new hire, Danny, watching me with concern. I forced a smile and focused on my screen, the familiar ticketing interface blurring through unshed tears. That night, I barely slept. I drafted resignation letters in my head, imagined dramatic confrontations, fantasized about exposing the whole rotten system. But by morning, a different thought had taken shape, one that made me smile for the first time in 24 hours. If management wanted to see what happened without my training, I would show them, in exquisite, measurable detail. I had no idea then how completely that decision would transform not just my career, but the entire company. Or that within weeks, Director Phelps would be begging me to reconsider when it was already far too late. The next day, I arrived early and made a single, crucial decision. I would do exactly what they asked. Nothing more, nothing less. I logged tickets. I answered calls. I followed official protocols to the letter. When new hires approached with questions, I smiled apologetically and directed them to Maeve or their assigned mentors. When colleagues asked why I wasn't training anymore, I shrugged and said, management decision. By day 3, the confusion was palpable. The new hires huddled together during breaks, frustrated expressions on their faces as they compared notes. Their mentors, already overloaded with their own work, grew snippy when interrupted with basic questions. Maeve looked increasingly frazzled, clutching my old training binder but clearly struggling to replicate my results. I watched, I documented. I said nothing. Week 1 passed, and the metrics told the story. The new cohort's productivity was 38% below my previous groups. Error rates were climbing. Call times stretched longer. The ticketing backlog grew. Danny, one of the brighter new hires, cornered me in the break room. "What's going on, Rowan? Maeve's training makes no sense. Half the procedures she showed us don't even work." I stirred my tea slowly. "I'm not allowed to discuss training methods anymore. But your guides were so clear. Do you have copies we could just look at?" I shook my head. All materials were surrendered to the training committee. Her face fell. "We're drowning out there. Customers are getting angry because we can't solve their problems fast enough. Follow the official protocols," I advised flatly, echoing Phelps' words. "They're established for a reason." Week 2 brought the first crisis. A major client threatened to cancel their contract after 3 consecutive support calls were mishandled by new hires using the official, committee-approved troubleshooting method. The correct solution had been clearly outlined in my decision tree guide, the one now collecting dust in some committee folder. Zora called an emergency team meeting. The atmosphere was tense as she pulled up the alarming metrics on the projector. "Our response times are unacceptable," she announced, frustration evident. "And the error rates from our newest team members." She trailed off, shaking her head. Phelps stood at the back, arms crossed, face darkening as Zora continued. "Does anyone have suggestions for getting our new colleagues up to speed more quickly?" she asked. The room fell silent. I sipped my water, eyes down. "Rowan?" Zora looked at me hopefully. "Any thoughts?" I felt Phelps' glare before I saw it. "I believe that's a question for the training committee," I replied evenly. Murmurs swept the room. Confusion. Surprise. My colleagues weren't used to me holding back information. After the meeting, Toby caught up with me in the hallway. "What happened to you? You used to be so helpful." "I'm following directives," I replied, loud enough for Phelps to hear as he passed. The director paused mid-stride, a flash of uncertainty crossing his face before he continued toward his office. That brief moment told me everything. He was starting to realize what he'd done. By week 3, the situation deteriorated further. 2 new hires had already quit, citing insufficient training in their exit interviews. 3 more were on performance improvement plans. Despite working overtime trying to master systems no one had properly taught them. The remaining 7 looked miserable, jumping whenever a supervisor approached. The rest of us were drowning in escalated tickets that new hires couldn't handle. Customer complaints doubled, then tripled. Our department's satisfaction score plummeted to an all-time low. I maintained my silent vigil, doing my job competently but offering nothing beyond what was strictly required. At night, I meticulously tracked every metric, every failure, every consequence of management's decision. Not for a future lawsuit as some might expect. I had something far more effective in mind. Wednesday of week 3, Maeve broke first. She appeared at my desk, dark circles under her eyes, voice lowered. "I need your help. The training materials they gave me are useless." "I'm banned from training activities," I reminded her. "I know, but..." She glanced around nervously. "What if I just ask some hypothetical questions about the ticketing system? Colleague to colleague? You mean the system you've been using for 2 years longer than I have?" I raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you should be teaching me." She flushed. "You know your methods work better. Why are you being so difficult?" "I'm not being difficult. I'm being compliant," I corrected her, exactly as instructed. The following day, I found Zora waiting at my desk when I returned from lunch. "Walk with me," she said quietly. We headed to the small courtyard behind the building. Once outside, she turned to me, expression pained. "The department is falling apart, Rowan." I nodded. "I've noticed. 4 weeks ago, we were exceeding every performance target. Now we're in danger of losing major accounts." "What changed?" We both knew what had changed, but I wanted to hear her say it. "New hires are struggling," she acknowledged finally. "Without proper training." "Sounds like a training committee issue," I offered innocently. Zora sighed. "Phelps made a mistake. We all know it, but he's too proud to admit it." She lowered her voice. "Help me fix this. Off the record. Give me copies of your training materials." I studied her face. Zora had been good to me overall, but she hadn't stood up for me when it mattered. "I don't have copies," I said truthfully. As instructed, I surrendered everything. "You don't have backups? Nothing at all?" I shrugged. "I'm very thorough about following directives." She stared at me for a long moment. "This isn't just about your pride, Rowan. Real people are suffering. New hires who did nothing wrong. Customers who depend on our support." Her words stung because they were true. But what she didn't understand was that this wasn't about pride at all. This was about demonstrating value in the only language management seemed to understand: consequences. I agree it's a serious situation, I said finally. Perhaps Director Phelps should reconsider his position on my training methods. Week 4 arrived, bringing with it the first wave of resignation emails. On Monday morning, 3 new hires didn't show up. Their goodbye messages were nearly identical. They couldn't succeed in an environment that set them up to fail. By Wednesday, 2 more had quit. The ticketing backlog reached unprecedented levels. Customers were switching to competitors. The sales team stopped booking demos because our support reputation had become so toxic. Thursday morning, I arrived to find my access card didn't work. After security let me in, I discovered my computer locked with a note to see HR immediately. My heart raced as I walked to Lionel's office, wondering if I'd miscalculated. Was I being fired? Had I pushed too far? Lionel wasn't alone. Phelps sat across from him, along with a woman I didn't recognize. Sharp suit, calculating eyes, tablet in hand. "Rowan, this is Catherine Wu, Regional Director." Lionel introduced us. I shook her hand, keeping my expression neutral despite my surprise. Regional directors didn't get involved in training disputes. "Please sit." Catherine gestured to the empty chair. "We have a situation I'm told you might help us understand." Phelps wouldn't meet my eyes, his jaw clenched tight. "In the past month," Catherine continued, "your department has experienced unprecedented attrition: 7 resignations, 2 transfers, and 3 employees on stress leave. Customer satisfaction down 48%. Support ticket backlog up 217%. She set her tablet down. Director Phelps suggests these issues began after a change to the training program. Phelps shifted uncomfortably as Catherine turned to him. "You removed Miss Rowan from training responsibilities despite her proven track record of success. May I ask why?" The moment hung in the air. I watched Phelps' face as he realized he'd been outmaneuvered. Whatever explanation he gave would either make him look incompetent or petty. "We had concerns about non-standard methodologies," he said finally. "Non-standard methodologies that delivered standard-exceeding results," Catherine noted dryly. She turned back to me. "Miss Rowan, I understand you developed training materials that were particularly effective?" "Yes," I said simply. "And these materials were confiscated?" "Submitted to the training committee for review." I corrected carefully. "Where they've sat untouched for a month," Catherine finished. She leaned forward. "Let me be direct. Our client retention team is in crisis mode. We've lost 3 major accounts this week alone, citing poor support experiences. Can your training methods fix this?" I felt 3 pairs of eyes on me. Catherine's calculating, Lionel's nervous, Phelps resentful. "Yes," I answered, "but not under the current conditions." "Explain," Catherine prompted. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, though it had arrived differently than expected. I'd imagined Phelps begging for help when the department collapsed. Instead, his boss was offering me leverage I hadn't anticipated. "My training methods work because they're adaptive and responsive," I explained. "They require autonomy to adjust based on feedback and results. If I'm micromanaged by people who don't understand the methodology, the results will suffer." Catherine nodded slowly. "What would you need to implement these methods effectively?" I'd rehearsed this answer for weeks, refining it each night as I documented the escalating chaos. Full authority over new hire training, independent budget for training resources, direct reporting line to whoever owns the department's performance metrics. I paused. "And proper compensation reflecting the specialized role." Phelps made a choking sound. "That's completely reasonable," Catherine cut him off, "given the circumstances." She turned back to me. "What about the current crisis? The backlog? The demoralized team? I'd need 2 weeks to turn things around. 3, to show measurable improvement in metrics." 2 weeks, Catherine repeated thoughtfully. She glanced at Phelps, whose face had gone pale. "That's quite a claim. I'm confident in my methods," I replied. Catherine studied me for a long moment before nodding. "Very well. Effective immediately. You'll oversee a new training and development division, reporting directly to me. We'll discuss budget and compensation separately." She stood, gathering her tablet. "I expect daily progress reports." As she walked out, Lionel scrambled after her, leaving me alone with Phelps. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. "You planned this," he accused quietly. I met his gaze steadily. "No, I simply stopped preventing the inevitable consequences of your decisions." His eyes narrowed. This isn't over. You're right, I agreed, rising from my chair. It's just beginning. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that my plan extended far beyond reclaiming my training role. The past month had revealed systemic failures throughout the organization, vulnerabilities I'd documented meticulously. Training was merely the first domino in a sequence I'd carefully arranged. As I walked out of HR, my phone buzzed with a calendar invite from Catherine. Strategic planning session, tomorrow 9 a.m. Little did anyone suspect that this meeting would set in motion events that would transform not just our department, but the entire company structure. By the time Phelps realized what was happening, it would be far too late to stop it. But that's getting ahead of the story. First, I had a broken department to rebuild and 12 empty desks to refill. I hit the ground running the next morning. Catherine had given me access to a small conference room that would serve as my temporary training headquarters. By 7 a.m., I'd already transformed the space, covering walls with fresh workflow diagrams and setting up 6 computer stations. Zora appeared in the doorway, eyebrows raised. Heard about your promotion. Quite the turnaround. Things change quickly when money walks out the door, I replied, taping up a color-coded troubleshooting guide. Need something? She stepped inside, closing the door. Just clarity. Are we okay? You and I? I paused, considering the question. Zora hadn't defended me when Phelps banned me from training, but she hadn't been the architect of my humiliation either. That depends, I said carefully. Will you support what I'm doing now, or undermine it? Support, she answered without hesitation. The last month has been a nightmare. Whatever issues existed before, they pale in comparison. I nodded, accepting this pragmatic alliance. Then we're okay. I need supervisor buy-in for what comes next. What exactly is coming next? She asked. I smiled. Resurrection. By 10 a.m., I'd gathered the remaining new hires, 5 shell-shocked survivors who looked ready to submit their resignations at any moment. Their expressions cycled from suspicion to confusion as I explained my new role. Wait, interrupted Danny, the bright new hire who'd approached me weeks earlier. You had the training solution all along, but weren't allowed to use it? Politics? I answered simply. But that's behind us now. Today, we start fresh. We're already weeks behind, another new hire, Jared, pointed out, and we've been trained all wrong. Untrained, I corrected. And yes, that's our first challenge. But I promise you this, give me 2 weeks of your full attention, and you'll be more capable than colleagues with years of experience. Their skepticism was palpable, but they had nothing to lose. We began immediately with my visual learning system, color-coded workflows, decision trees, memory techniques, tailored to different learning styles. By lunch, I could already see sparks of understanding replacing their confusion. Phelps made his first move that afternoon, summoning Maeve to observe my training for consistency purposes. I welcomed her with a smile, knowing her presence would only strengthen my position. Either she would report back that my methods were ineffective, contradicting the visible evidence, or she would acknowledge their superiority, undermining Phelps' original decision. Interesting approach, Maeve commented, as I demonstrated my ticketing system shortcuts. Quite unconventional. Results aren't conventional either, I replied pleasantly. Feel free to take notes. Days passed in a whirlwind of focused activity. I created personalized learning paths for each new hire. I rebuilt my training materials from memory, improving them with lessons learned from the recent chaos. Afternoons were dedicated to hands-on practice with real customer issues, carefully selected to build confidence alongside competence. By day 5, the transformation was undeniable. The new hires processed tickets independently, their error rates plummeting. Customer feedback improved. The backlog, while still intimidating, had stopped growing. Catherine dropped by unannounced, watching silently from the back as I guided the team through a complex troubleshooting scenario. Impressive, she noted afterward. But 5 trained staff won't solve our immediate crisis. Phase 1, I explained. I'm ready for Phase 2. Rebuilding the team. She raised an eyebrow. You have candidates in mind? Better, I replied. I have a selection system. The next morning, I presented my hiring strategy to Catherine and the HR team. Instead of traditional interviews that favored confident speakers, I proposed a problem-solving assessment that measured adaptability and learning capacity. Rather than vague behavioral questions, candidates would demonstrate how they approached unfamiliar challenges. This will identify people who thrive with your training methods, Catherine realized. Exactly, I confirmed, and we can implement immediately for the 12 open positions. Lionel shifted uncomfortably. our standard hiring process has produced a 58% early turnover rate, Catherine interrupted. We're trying something new. Phelps made his second move that afternoon, circulating an email questioning the rushed implementation of unproven hiring methods. He copied the entire executive team, clearly hoping to rally opposition. Instead, Catherine responded with a single sentence. Given recent outcomes, innovation seems preferable to proven failure. Her public support silenced potential critics, but Phelps wasn't finished. I knew he would escalate. The only question was how. While rebuilding the department consumed my days, my evenings were dedicated to something far more strategic. Each night, I refined the data I'd been collecting since my removal from training. Metrics that told a story far beyond one director's poor decision. The narrative that emerged revealed systemic issues throughout the company, communication silos between departments, decision-making bottlenecks, resource misallocations that hurt customer experience. I organized these insights into a compelling presentation, knowing the right moment would eventually come. Week 2 brought our first major victory. 3 former new hires who had quit contacted me directly, asking if positions were still available. They'd heard about the changes from former colleagues and wanted to return. Their familiarity with our systems meant they could become productive almost immediately. Rehiring former employees? Phelps questioned loudly during a department meeting. What message does that send about our standards? That we correct mistakes, I responded evenly. That we value people enough to earn second chances. The room fell silent. Everyone understood. I wasn't just talking about the returning employees. As predicted, the metrics began improving dramatically. Ticket resolution times decreased by 32%. Customer satisfaction scores climbed. The backlog, while still substantial, shrank daily as our newly empowered team tackled it systematically. Catherine was impressed enough to accelerate my hiring plan, approving all 12 positions at once. The candidates identified through my new assessment process integrated seamlessly into the training program, their progress even faster than the original groups. Phelps made his final desperate move on Thursday of the second week. He scheduled a private meeting with Catherine, bringing a thick folder of what I later learned were concerns about sustainability and procedural irregularities in my approach. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need to be. The groundwork had already been laid. The metrics spoke for themselves. The team's performance told the story more eloquently than any defense I could offer. When Catherine emerged from that meeting, her expression gave nothing away. But the calendar invitation that appeared in my inbox minutes later told me everything I needed to know. Executive strategy presentation. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. All directors required. The moment had arrived sooner than expected. That night, I finalized my presentation, polishing data visualizations that made the problems and solutions unmistakably clear. I rehearsed key points until the words flowed naturally. By morning, I felt strangely calm, as if the outcome were already determined. The boardroom was packed when I arrived. Directors from every department sat around the massive table, with Catherine at the head. Phelps took the seat farthest from her, his expression a mixture of confusion and apprehension. He clearly didn't understand why this meeting had been called. 2 weeks ago, Catherine began, I tasked Rowan with addressing a critical failure in our customer support department. Today, she'll present not just those results, but a broader analysis that affects all our operations. She nodded to me. The floor is yours. I connected my laptop to the projector and began. What started as a training problem revealed something much larger. Systemic inefficiencies, costing us millions annually. For the next 30 minutes, I walked them through the data, engagement metrics, productivity patterns, communication bottlenecks, resource misallocations. I showed how decisions made in isolation cascaded into company-wide problems. I demonstrated how traditional hierarchies were slowing innovation and responsiveness. The room grew increasingly quiet as directors recognized their departments in the analysis. These weren't accusations, but revelations, clear pathways from current practices to measurable outcomes. The solution, I concluded, isn't incremental change, it's structural transformation. I unveiled my proposal, a flattened organizational structure with cross-functional teams aligned to customer needs rather than internal hierarchies. Decision-making authority pushed closer to customer contact points. Performance metrics tied directly to customer experience rather than departmental efficiency. In this model, I explained, showing the new organizational chart, directors become enablers rather than gatekeepers. Their success depends on empowering their teams, not controlling them. Phelps's face had gone completely white. He now understood what was happening. This wasn't just about training. This wasn't even about him anymore. This was about dismantling the very power structure that had allowed his behavior to flourish. Catherine studied the proposal silently before addressing the room. Implementation timeline? 90 days for phase 1, I answered. Full transition within 6 months. She nodded slowly. And leadership roles in this new structure? This was the moment, the culmination of my plan, the revenge I'd crafted so carefully. Each functional area needs a leader with demonstrated ability to empower others and adapt to changing conditions, I explained. Based on the performance data collected over the past quarter, I've identified optimal candidates for each position. I clicked to the next slide, revealing my recommended leadership assignments. Gasps echoed through the room as directors saw their names, most in new positions, some promoted, others reassigned to roles better matching their skills. Phelps' name appeared under a newly created Process Documentation Specialist position, a role with no direct reports, no decision-making authority, and no path to advancement, a professional dead end disguised as a lateral move. His eyes met mine across the room, realization dawning that this had been my goal all along. Not to get him fired, that would be too obvious, too easily dismissed as personal vengeance. Instead, I'd engineered a complete restructuring that made his management style obsolete while creating a position perfectly tailored to contain him. This is absurd, he sputtered. You can't possibly consider. The metrics make a compelling case, Catherine interrupted, particularly the correlation between management approaches and team performance. She surveyed the room. We'll review the proposal in detail and begin implementation planning next week. As the meeting concluded, directors clustered in stunned conversation. Some approached me with questions, others with congratulations, thinly disguising their anxiety. Through it all, I maintained a professional demeanor, discussing transition plans and implementation challenges as if this were simply another business decision. Because in the end, that's exactly what it was. My revenge wasn't emotional or vindictive. It was logical, data-driven, and impossible to refute without rejecting the very metrics the company had always valued. 3 months later, the transformation was well underway. Our department had become the company's success story, with customer satisfaction at record highs. The new organizational structure was already showing promising results in other divisions, and Phelps spent his days maintaining process documentation that nobody read. His influence diminished to irrelevance. My new role as Director of Operational Excellence gave me authority to continue driving changes throughout the company. Each improvement further validated my approach, making the old hierarchy increasingly indefensible. The ultimate victory wasn't personal satisfaction, though I certainly felt that. It was creating a system where no single person could abuse power without consequences, where value was measured by contribution rather than position, where good ideas couldn't be silenced by insecure managers. If you've ever been underestimated, silenced, or pushed aside despite knowing you were right, take heart. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't confrontation but transformation. Document everything. Track the impact. Build something better. And when the moment comes, be ready to show not just what went wrong, but how everything could be right. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and share your experiences in the comments. Has a workplace setback ever led you to create something better? I'd love to hear how you turned obstacles into opportunities. Subscribe for more stories about transforming challenges into unexpected victories, because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead.